Okay, welcome to the Opperman Report. I'm your host, Private Investigator.
Welcome to Joanna the Medium Show, broadcast on Ever Beyond Radio and through the Wolf Spirit Media Network, helping you transform from fear to freedom and reminding you of your true power. During this broadcast, we will discuss anything and everything connecting to owning your inner power and the essence of your spirit. We will hear inspiring stories from guests, as well as guidance from the spirit world. Jump on board for this incredible ride. Here's your host, Joanna.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for coming back. I hope you had a great weekend. Today is going to be a special show, or at least it's going to be a special show, because I have decided to take your questions, your most burning questions. So for those of you who are tuning in and who have given me your questions, thank you so much. I have literally about 160 questions, which I won't be able to go through the whole thing. But if you guys like it and you let me know, I will make this a regular appearance. So, is there anything I need to let you know? Yes, I do. Thank you. My guide is already reminding me. Anything that comes through me and from me is not to be taken as gospel unless you believe it's true for you. In other words, every single one of us has the ability to live and believe in the way they feel and want. So it isn't me saying that things are a certain way and there is no other, truths. Point is that whether it's me or somebody else, always listen with your intuition, with your heart, for your heart will tell you whether it is true for you. So that is one of the first things that he wants me to say. And I think that's very important. Okay, let's get started. A lot of the questions were about spirituality, how to connect with your spiritual self, and a lot about meditation. So the first question I have is advice on how to connect with your spirit guides. One of the things that's being shown to me right away is the word patience, patience, patience. There is a lot of inner work required in order for one to effectively communicate with those who are on the other side. Not because it's a difficult task, but because it requires tremendous amount of effort and dedication towards one's self. So that was a direct channel. It feels I'll be going in and out through channeling and then through talking. So basically what is being said here is that in order to hear our spirit guides, it's like anything. It's a skill that needs to develop over time. But it generally stems from the idea of trust. So trusting your intuition, for example. Once we learn how to trust our intuition, we will then begin to trust the messages that we receive. And he's saying to me that although some of you or some of us have been born with the ability to clearly see and perceive from the very early age, there are more that need to develop this sort of quality over time, and that takes patience and dedication. So quieting the mind is absolutely critical in this equation. Why? Because quieting the mind allows the circuit of our brain to slow down and not send a whole bunch of impulses to grab our attention, and it allows us to go deeper into our deeper consciousness and also the subconscious aspect. So what's being said essentially is that in order to hear your guides, hear your loved ones, and communicate with them effectively according to you, you need to develop trust in yourself and the ability to be able to practice as this ability grows within you. What he's also asking me to say is this: you will not necessarily hear like you hear me audibly right now on this audio, but you will get a feeling that is associated with a certain emotion. So another aspect of being closer with our spirit is to recognize our emotions. And a lot of us are walking around trying not to feel, because a lot of the things that we have stuffed in our bodies are feelings that are not very, happy. So many of us, I work with many people who literally shut off their emotions, and they're typically live in their head. So point is that in order to become trusting in ourselves, we need to develop the ability to feel and not be able to, and be able not to run away from it. So I'm asking him, what is the purpose of feeling in this instance? Feeling allows you to know where you are at, whether you're on track or not. And again, this goes back to the whole idea of intuition. So for those of you who are going to be developing this ability, and by the way, every single human being has it. It is not reserved for certain individuals. It's just a matter of one having awareness of the ability to use it and therefore choosing to exercise that right. Is there anything else I need to tell them on this? No, that was a full stop. So I hope that answers that question. So this is how it's going to go tonight. Let me get a sip of water. So there's another connection to this question, how to trust your intuition. And I don't know if I fully answered that question, but he's coming forward and saying, trusting intuition is like learning how to ride a bike. First you start with a tricycle, then eventually you will be on a two-wheeler. In other words, practice patience, practice patience. That's how you trust your intuition. Because with time, you'll develop the trust in what you perceived and what actually transpired. And eventually, when you have number of situations that, quote unquote, prove your intuition correct, you will develop the ability to rely on it and therefore believe it, or rather believe it and then rely on it. So that is how you will solidify your intuition. Now, sometimes fear steps in, and in time of a lot of emotional turmoil especially, fear will have a tendency to take over. Why? Because it seems to be louder, quote unquote. Our thoughts seem to be louder than our hidden emotions or hidden emotions? Yeah, hidden abilities to perceive. So sometimes it's difficult to go intuition when one is going through a very challenging time emotionally speaking. Why? Because typically during those times we will be faced with our fears in order to overcome certain aspects in our journey, and those fears will have a tendency to be slightly lighter than normal or louder than normal. So but what I'm trying to say here is that always listen to your intuition, but also know that sometimes it can be difficult distinguishing fear versus intuition, particularly when it's challenging times and when it's something you really, really, really want, because then the ego steps in. Okay, let's move on to the next question. How to stay in the mindset of coming from a place of abundance and not from a place of lack. So that's fantastic. Lack apparently is one of those things that most individuals have at some point in their life. And it is mostly lack in one's self, whether it's ability, whether the way we look, the way we perceive ourselves. All those things will have an impact on how we see and feel about ourselves, and therefore how we effectively communicate that to the world, which brings back the fruition, which is the manifestation. So number one, to have the mindset of abundance, there's a need, which is the first step, to recognize that belief system exists. Because a lot of it is so much on a subconscious level. It is like being on autopilot. We will do things and see things and say things and think things without even realizing that there is a subconscious negative belief system attached to it. And that's just what us humans do. So the number one thing is awareness. You cannot have abundance within you unless you recognize the lack within you, right? So that was actually a direct quote. So recognizing the negative aspects, number one. Typically, these are things that, negatively affect our life, but they come from our childhood, almost always. And yes, they can come from a different lifetime, but something in this lifetime always has to set it in motion. So recognizing lack and then working towards changing that belief system. Now, it's a process that doesn't happen overnight. It's something that transpires over time, given consistent effort and the ability to be patient with the process and recognize when it needs adjustments. I'm going to clarify what that means. Okay, so sometimes when we recognize certain patterns, we want to jump in right away and go into the next belief system. But it's not quite that easy. It's almost like I'm going to ask him to describe this with a vision. It's like a body of water. It has no beginning and the end. In other words, there is no switch. It's something that happens and develops over time. And the most important thing is patience, but also the ability to recognize what is actually going on. Once you or the individual recognizes the pattern, begins to think differently, and that requires constant effort of paying attention, then you will choose differently. That will lead you to different choices. And I think that's how I want to address this. Let me just see here. Okay, the other thing is to recognize the negative belief system, is to look at reoccurring instances in your life that seem to have quote-unquote negative label on it. And notice if there is a string that connects those situations together. In other words, notice if there is a pattern. Us humans live on patterns because it's a point of safety and security and belonging. So we have to have patterns. A lot of the patterns are great. Some of our patterns are not so great. Most of the time we are not aware of our patterns. So becoming aware of your patterns will then begin to help you see the aspects you might want to change, which you term negative. That was a bit philosophical, so let's move on to the next question. Okay. How to recognize your life purpose and the steps to implement. This is a really good question. It's a question that I receive a lot of the time from my clients, and it's a question that I've had in my life as well. And one of the things that keeps coming through from Spirit and other sources that I've seen and heard is that, number one, he's stepping forward. Number one, it's first and foremost is the ability to recognize oneself on a deeper level. What does that mean? It means that in order to realize what it is that one wants, one has to first learn who they are, right? So again, there's the notion again of the need to go within in order to recognize one's self, which would then give you more ability to see what it is that you want to do in your life. So meditation, any sort of exercise that allow you to tuning in. The other component is the feeling component, which I talked about a moment ago. Many of us, I'm going to term it that way, recognize success and abundance by the way our society has shown it to us. So I'm just going to throw an example. We recognize success by driving a beautiful car. We recognize success by having this specific house. We recognize success because you are dating someone who looks like this, or that. So these are the norms that we come equipped with due to the environment we live in. And that basically feeds us the ideas that then become our own truth, so to speak. So what's being said here is that it's important to recognize what it is you're looking for. No, but not only that, why is it important to you? In other words, if your idea, for an example, is a beautiful house, the deeper question would be, what does this beautiful house represent to me? Because oftentimes we search for things on the outside without actually realizing what the driving factor is. And the driving factor either stems from our pure heart and our soul, or from our fear. It's just the way it is. So being able to recognize it is very important. Did that answer the question? No, not enough. Okay, so let me just keep going with this. The other way to recognize your purpose is one of the ways I do it with my clients is, if there was one thing that you needed in your life when you were young but did not receive it, what would it be in terms of an emotion, a feeling? So the answer will be love, safety, security, feeling like I belong, feeling valued, feeling worthy, blah, blah, all the gazillion other things, right? So let's pick one for an example. So you recognize that the number thing you always wanted but never received was the feeling of being valued, right? So that is what you are working on in this lifetime, not because other people are going to give it to you, but because you're going to learn how to recognize this within yourself. first and foremost, because anything other than that is, it's kind of pointless because it doesn't last. So where was I going with this? So yes, once you have this emotion and the feeling that you are after, and it seems to be the pattern for you, then you have a recognition of what it is that you are likely to do in this world in order to give it. So in other words, if you have felt invalidated by your situations, doing something that will allow other people feel good about themselves is basically what you're meant to do. Now, there's different ways to talk about this, but it's essential to know that it's not a particular thing. It is a feeling, and a feeling can be derived doing many different things, but the feeling will be produced and will be the same. So it's really important to recognize that, in my opinion, but it also allows you, but also what it does, in order to do that, it forces you to go deep within in order to recognize yourself. Let me grab a drink of water. I hope that was helpful. Okay. Also, when I talk, it's partly I'm aware of what I'm saying and partly I'm not. So if I stall, it's because I'm actually trying to remember what I just said, for those of you who channel. Okay, and how to implement your life purpose? Well, basically once you recognize what your life purpose is or what the feeling is, then notice what it is that you can do in order to achieve that feeling. And that can look a gazillion different ways. The expression of how you achieve that feeling is totally and utterly up to you. Now, is there any danger in tarot cards, mediums, etc.? I love these questions because, for obvious reasons, I do this. I always wondered if I'm crazy. I did. I was never a tarot reader. And now that I do these things, I get so much more information and different people make different comments. So the question, I love the question, is there any danger in tarot cards, medium, etc.? So this is obviously coming from me, and that is my truth. The answer is no. But I would like to explain the reason why behind my answer is no. I do not believe that any tool is the danger itself. I believe the tool, like any other tool given by God, and that's how he's asking me to say, is only dangerous used with the wrong intent and by the wrong person. So I do not believe that cards are danger, because cards represent nothing other than our imagination. So the intent of cards, so a card is a tool. It's a visual tool. And someone can use that tool and use it for bad, quotation marks, and someone can use this tool and use it for good. The tool itself is not the issue here. It's the force behind it, typically the human. So it is not about the skill. It is not about the gift. It is about the ability to use such in a way that helps the world versus diminishes. So there's the positive and negative, and you can term it black or white. Mediums, essentially the same thing. So what am I doing right now? I am connected with years and years and years of preparation with a source which I will term my guides. You can call it whatever you want. The information that I'm providing from you, and although it's being filtered through my brain, is being fed through them to me for you. So if I had ill intentions, I could easily use this tool in ways that would not be empowering, but that is not my intention. So again, it would not be the equipment I come with, it would be my intention, which is me. So again, it's the person, it's the human. And that can be said for, I would say, most things in life. So no, I do not believe that tarot and mediums and cards are danger. What I do believe is that there are those behind these tools that use it for the wrong reasons and the wrong purpose. And with that, I obviously will never agree. So it's about intent. Now, What do you find more accurate, numerology or astrology, and why? I actually don't know either, to be honest with you. I'm not a tarot reader, like I said. I am not an astrologer. I'm not a card reader. I mean, I'm learning all this stuff. I literally just started talking to spirit, and that was the end of the story. So I actually don't know. I cannot compare. The only reason why I have monthlies on YouTube by zodiac sign, because that was the easiest way to separate the population. It seems to make the messages a little bit more, not accurate, but a little bit more, I want to say precise and maybe more private that way. Let's put it that way. So that's the only thing. And I know basic stuff about horoscopes and my sign. I'm a Taurus, with a Libra rising, I believe. Some of you, I think, asked that question. Libra or Sagittarius, one of those two. Anyway, so I don't know. I like everything. Numerology has been presented to me from spirit in the last, I want to say, year and a half. But it's not because it's numerology. It's just certain numbers have a certain message, and I know what to say when I see certain numbers, because the way I see and communicate with spirit, it's not necessarily with sentences like I do here right now. So I hope that answers that question. Now, this is, I think, personal question about me. What were the things in your life that ultimately led you to this line of work? Okay, so that is a very interesting question, because it's going to tie into a question that is down below. When I was very young, I was not aware of my gifts. My gifts came as a result of, I will call, a middle life crisis, but it wasn't in the middle of my life. And it seemed to have loosened up certain skills and gifts that ended up being a permanent tool for me to literally do my work, do my job. So it's kind of a hard question to answer, because I think it would take 40 minutes to actually answer that question. But in a quick way, I had little things in my childhood life that when I look back, I can now recognize they were different. I saw things and I heard things, but they were very fleeting. So I never paid attention. In my teenage years, I became very intuitive, though I didn't know nobody else was. So I didn't know it was any different. I was always fascinated with psychology. And people would always come to me, strangers would always come to me asking for advice. So the idea of wanting and desiring to help others was always there from a very young age. As a matter of fact, one of the last recent memories that I had was when I was very, very young, and this is probably the age of 7 or 8, I remember saying to myself, I want to be a teacher. And I know that I didn't say it for the right reasons. In other words, as a little girl, I wanted to be a teacher because I wanted to have control of a teacher giving me good marks. But now I look back, my desire is to teach. So essentially what I do is I project information from spirit to you. But basically what happened is I was in a corporate world, and then it didn't work out, and then I got here. But I think I want to leave it at that, because I think maybe I can spend an entire show on that. And I think I've had one of those shows already in the past. So I will revisit this question in the future. Now, does God punish people for their sins? I love this question. And here's why I'm so passionate about wanting you to be the most exquisite aspect of yourself, which is called empowerment. God does not exist the way many people feel or think God exists. And again, you have to check this with your truth. Listen with your heart. Your heart will tell you whether it's true or not. The God as we humans know it is not the God that exists in the universe. It's just an idea that was invented by the human in order to accomplish certain things. And I'm not going to talk about that. So there is no such thing as punishment, because there is no such thing as sin. Now, for some of you, this is going to be a little bit difficult to accept. I understand. I come from a religious background, from a Catholic background, although at a very young age, probably the age of 5, already many things didn't make sense to me, and I was questioning religion back then. And nothing against religion. I admire every single one of them, but I subscribe to none of them. Religion is a way of getting close to God. Unfortunately, behind religion stands, again, the proverbial human who has various ideas and agendas and belief systems, which creates problems. So it's not the religion itself. But no, I do not believe that God judges ourselves. And as a matter of fact, during my spiritual moments, sometimes I will travel to places and I will feel and see and hear things. And then I bring back information which allows me to do what I do. And I had this conversation, and what was shown to me was not only clear as day, but it made every single cell in my body sing, which told me it was the absolute truth. And I knew it with every single cell of my body. And I was shown that God does not judge us. There is no such thing. Because what God would God be if he gave you free will, if you're not able to exercise it because you would be punished for it? Makes no sense. It was an idea invented by the human in order to do certain things, and not good or bad, it's just the way it is. So again, the human seems to be the culprit here, but that's not usual. What I've shown is that when we come back to the other side and we have the ability to review the life that we've had based on what was intended, we then, because of so much respect we have God, because of what was given to us, we decide to say, you know what, I'm going to try harder, I'm going to do it again. And we do it on our own volition, which means we go back to life and experience it again. So there is absolutely no judgment on God's part. And I will tell you one more other thing that I asked when I was up there. I asked, why is God a man? And the answer was this: what makes you think God is only a male part? God is also female. So that is definitely not an answer I expected, but it was an answer that made logical sense to me. Everything in life is yin and yang. It's male, female. It's opposing directions, because that is what makes everything exist in harmony. That's what it is. So now he says, explain the word sin. So according to my guide, this is created by human. Sin is an idea that was developed in order to keep the devotees devoted to their patron. Patron? Oh, okay. He's showing it to me. So the idea here is that it was a concept that was developed as in order to punish those who were not devoted to their leader. So in other words, if you didn't obey, you were then cursed with a sin. Oh my gosh, that is so. I don't know. I can't prove this. I don't even know if it's right. But it is what I'm being asked to say. So for those of you who are into this kind of stuff, let me know if that makes sense to you, because that's actually quite fascinating. I hope that answers this. Let me just see if he wants to add more information to it. He's asking me to say that if God was so nearsighted, he wouldn't give you life. What does that mean? He said God doesn't play games. In other words, to give us free will, but then the very moment we choose to exercise it, we get punished for it. That makes perfect sense. Okay, let's move on to the next question. What is the meaning of being spiritual? What does it entail? I love this question. Absolutely love this question. So this person says that they believe, and this is probably many of you have a difficulty with this idea of a spirit guide, but you do believe in God or whoever you want to call. So yeah, that's totally normal, but I'm just going to go with this. What is the meaning of being spiritual, and what does this entail? So what I'm being told here is spirituality is nothing more, nothing less than your ability to become true to yourself. In other words, by knowing but who you are and becoming who you are. When I say becoming who you are, owning who you are. So it feels like I'm going to just put it in English. It feels like it's a concept that is all about connecting to your deepest core. And your deepest core is light. And I'm going to say this, you are spark of the divine. So if you are spark of the divine, you're one of the same, therefore you are divine. So spirituality is being able to connect with it and become it and own it. And we're all spiritual because we're all on a spiritual journey. Some of us choose not to believe it for our own personal growth as a soul. And that is not good or bad. It's just different. That is how we choose to experience life in this existence. Now, what does it entail? He says, being true to yourself. For when you're true to yourself, you know who God is. Oh my God, that's so beautiful. So as you see, the way I'm perceiving this, there's no rules, there's no regulations, there is no preparatory things one has to do in order to feel worthy of, developing this connection with God. Every single individual has it innately in their core. Because how can you be a part of something yet not be that thing? It doesn't exist. The only separation is the separation within the mind that is happening while we're inhabiting our human form in order to learn through physical existence of who we truly are, because it is through trials and tribulations and through not having awareness of your power, then we get to prove it to ourselves once again. And I don't think I answered that correctly, but I'm going to let that go. And I'll come back to it at some other time because that's a worthy question. That's a really, really good question. Okay. What advice can you give on dealing with the loss of a loved one? Let me just say first and foremost, there is no formula. There's no spiritual formula. There is no formula when it comes to grief and when it comes to loss of love, of a loved one, because love never ceases to exist. It's a loved one. So first and foremost, the biggest thing that's being shown to me is the word acceptance. Now, I'm going to ask him to tell me about acceptance. Okay. Acceptance does not mean choosing to not reflect on what just happened. Acceptance is about remembering the good and allowing the painful to come out. I'm going to ask him to say it again. So first, okay, honoring the process of grief is very, very important. Some of us grieve one way, some of us grieve another way. Some of us grieve shorter, some of us grieve longer. There are various formulas, psychologically speaking, that talk about this. But he says, bear in mind there's no such thing as one and the same. Even though we're all the same, two humans will be very different, even if the differences are very small. So allow yourself the time to grieve. The other aspect is allow yourself receive. He's saying to me that in a time of sorrow, we go into hiding and we often forget to receive. So isolation happens, which brings on various feelings, including depression. So one of the ways to cope is to make sure that you allow yourself so that others can help you and give to you. These are physical aspects, but those are all things that will help one with loss. Also, learning to communicate with your loved one can be a challenging act, but it's actually so simple. It is actually really funny, because to communicate with your loved one, all you have to do is have a conversation with them. They hear you. The problem we run into is that we don't hear them back. And even if we do have a very strong intuition and we talk to guides all the time, in a moment of grief, our energy temporarily takes a dip, which prevents us from being closer connected to our intuition. So even those of us who are very adept at doing this will, difficult moments, have difficulty connecting with that. Grief is a very heavy vibration. So that is it. Let me just see, is there anything else? And just patience, having patience with yourself. Also recognizing signs. So for those of you who choose to talk to your departed ones in your mind, ask them for signs. They will come in terms of dreams, repetitive thoughts, out of the blue thoughts that are repetitive, songs, names, dates, repetition. And incidentally, I'm being asked to include the repeating number sequence because somebody asked, what is the repeated number? So those are actually signs. So your loved ones may also be communicating with you through signs. The problem is a lot of us don't know how to recognize it, so we don't pay attention to it. So learn to pay attention to things that are kind of out of the ordinary, okay? And then if it starts repeating themselves, particularly when a thought of a loved one comes in, you can pretty much rest assured that it's your loved one trying to send you signs. It is rare for a loved one to come in and appear in front of you after they pass. And it has nothing to do with how spiritual or not spiritual you are. Zero. It has to do everything with the way they pass, their energy, they're at currently, their abilities before and after passing. It has a lot of things to do with anything other than with everything other than being spiritual or non-spiritual. And patience. So I hope that helps. The other thing is journal writing, either putting together memories of your loved one, writing, journaling, emotions, journaling how you feel. All those seemingly little things will yield a huge results over time. Okay, now, what is the best way to practice personal emotional control when relaying messages from spirit to the living and vice versa? Okay, so what I'm hearing this question ask me is, how do I not get my own emotion, my own intellect get in the way? I feel that's what you are asking. Okay. So it's practice putting your mind at rest, which happens through meditation. So it is about calming your mind, because what happens is when you calm your mind, you're less likely to be triggered by various emotions because your mind is kind of sort of at a distance. I'll put it that way. So you become more of a neutral channel. Now, can you truly be neutral when you're conscious? I do not believe so. I believe that you can be pretty neutral, or you can do as best as you can to be neutral. But inevitably, sometimes the message will be filtered through your own stuff. So one way to avoid that is to be very, very cognizant of, again, your stuff. So it's, again, awareness. Awareness is everything, guys. I'm telling you, awareness is everything. And that's why I talk about it so much. So it is about having awareness. Let me see. So I hope that answers the question. Let me just see if there's anything else he wants me to add to this. I think that answers it. If not, let's come back to it another time. Okay. How does one figure out which chakra is out of balance and bring it back to balance? So that's an interesting one. Right away, I'm being shown with a body, a physical body, and all the organs. And what he's showing me is that certain chakras will have a gland connected, or set of glands connected to a particular energy center, which is a chakra. So the easiest, apparently, way to figure out which chakra is out of balance is look at what emotional or physical discomforts you have in any specific area of a body that seems to be reoccurring on regular basis over time. Okay? Now, this could be, okay, let me just see. Okay, for example, If you have issues with throat, if you always get colds, and I mean always get colds, you're the old one, always sick. If you have issues with your thyroid, if you have issues with any issues around throat, swallowing, blah, blah, anything like that, there's a pretty good indication that there is something going on deeper beneath the skin, if you will, on an energetic level that is at least contributing to the situation being experienced, if not totally influenced by it. Okay? I believe, and this is absolutely no medical examination type thing, I believe that those of us who have suppressed voices for most of our lives have issues with thyroid. And I've seen this in almost all my clients over the last 17 years. So that is probably the surest way to kind of figure out what is out of balance. Also, it's asking me to share this exercise with you. When you close your your eyes, and you imagine breathing in white light from your first chakra up to the top or reverse, whichever way you prefer, from your crown all the way to your root chakra. See it as a white light or, water, whatever you want to see it. Notice if it stops in any area as you push this white energy through your body from the top of your head to the bottom. I've never seen this before. This is something he's asked me to do literally just now. So I'm actually going to try this myself. But essentially, it's about recognizing where the energy stops or stagnates or moves slower or is being, challenged by something. Okay. So that's, again, I've never tried this before. So let's see, if you guys do it, let me know. Let me know how it works. Okay. Now, let's move on to the next question. How does one mentally and emotionally balance themselves after abuse? Okay. That's a difficult one. It's a difficult one because, well, for obvious reasons, but also aside from that, because the abuse that I feel this is being referred to is one that's done over time and over a prolonged period of time. So it becomes a pattern which then solidifies a certain belief within you about you based on the environment that was being experienced. So it's not just the physical and mental, it's the deeply rooted subconscious component as well. So the best way to balance, how do I answer this question to them? Okay, so the first thing he wants me to say is by recognizing yourself first. And what this means is by recognizing your importance. Those who have been abused will almost always and pretty quickly feel very diminished within themselves. And that makes perfect sense if you think about it. If you have been abused and you've had this over time, a belief system will develop within you that something is going on with you. You're not going to feel very good about yourself. I'll just put it that way. So the recognition that you are worthy and important part of this existence is a must. And that can take a lot of time for many of us, myself included, because the idea of worth is a very interesting concept. Almost every single human being coming to this world has some sort of worth challenge. Some have little, some have a lot. But we all have it. And it was shown to me that it's actually a human condition. It is one of those things that we come into this world, we get the stamp of something is wrong at some point. Religion does a good job of this. Nothing against religion. And then we end up developing a certain belief system. So recognizing your importance is extremely important because when you recognize your importance, you then begin to take the steps to validate yourself. And those of us who have been beaten up will have a tendency to want to look for validations in others. And that's just symptoms. That's just a symptom of abuse, a lot of the time. Also, getting adequate help obviously is very important. So depending on the extent of what it was, as a matter of fact, it doesn't matter what the extent is. If you if you feel a certain way because of what happened, it's important to get some help. So whether it's talking to somebody who's qualified, which I would normally say, because they know how to deal with certain psychological components, whether it's you need to do some healing, right? Also, one of the things that can also help one overcome the feeling of abuse and becoming more balanced is recognizing certain patterns that have stemmed from particular abuse. Why is it important? Because when you recognize certain patterns, it then puts you in a position of power. Why? Because when you recognize patterns, you then have the idea of a choice being in front of you versus life just happening to you. In other words, when you become that you behave a certain way in certain relationships and you become aware of it, you can then, by recognizing that, you can then make a conscious different choice, which puts you out of the autopilot position. And when we are in an autopilot position, particularly when it comes to behavior that brings us negative results. I just lost the train of thought. Oh my gosh. I have to get back on track.
Abuse.
I know, it was just a train of thought. Power. Oh my God. It just cut on me. That happens too. Okay, let me just see if I can come back to this. Oh, this is funny. This is what happens when I channel, and then boom, sometimes it just goes. And then I'll have to come back to it. I think it's called How to Deal with Stressful Situation. I think I'm going to let that go. And if I didn't answer that question correctly, we'll come back to it. But essentially, he's asking me just to repeat this. It's essentially becoming more empowered within yourself. Because when you become more empowered within yourself, you give less of yourself to others. But I'm not saying don't give of yourself. You don't let others overpower you, disempower you, or they don't take your energy. In other words, when you're more strong within yourself, you're much more apt to holding your own and just standing on your own 2 feet. That's what I want to say. So strength and feeling empowerment. Okay. How can someone handle hers or her anxiety? Though it's a simple concept, it's not necessarily that simple in its delivery. And essentially, an anxiety is a symptom of something seemingly going wrong according to your mind. Okay, so in other words, we get anxious because we are perceiving something is going to happen. We can have anxiousness with good stuff, but we're talking about an anxiety here, right? So again, recognizing what is being triggered, what sort of things, what fears, what things in the past are being triggered in order to bring on an anxiety. Okay? Once that's recognized, it's to be able to make peace with whatever it was. In other words, acceptance also needs to happen. And again, this is simple in theory, but it's, it takes time, effort, and definitely dedication over time in practice. Helping someone recognize maybe things within you. In other words, if you have someone you trust, because sometimes when we're anxious, or in general, we have difficulty, knowing what we want and who we are. Having a trusted friend maybe help you recognize certain things that you do that bring you constantly results that don't work. So it's not pinpointing or pointing out faults. It's just about recognizing patterns. Because, again, patterns give rise to certain behaviors, which then give rise to certain manifestations coming to our life. So it's all about, I almost want to say the word correcting how we think, but that's not because it's incorrect. It's just changing how we think about various aspects in life, which will then change how we respond to them. And fear is one of the biggest one. And I think there was a question here to expand on a fear. And I don't know if I have enough time because that's a huge topic in itself. But, recognizing what makes one anxious and recognizing so for example, if being in front of people makes you anxious, then you have to ask yourself this question. What is it about being in front of other people that makes me anxious? I'm exposed. Okay. Next question. What is it about me being exposed that is so uncomfortable? I feel people are going to find out about me. Okay. What is it about you being found out about you that you're afraid of? Nobody will want me. Bingo. Okay. So when you recognize all those things, then you can begin to work on that. So with this, I don't want to be alone example, nobody wants to be alone. That's just a fact of life. I think most humans don't want to be alone. But this is more about a fear of being alone. So obviously something must have happened at some point in one's life in order to give one the idea that they should be fearful of being alone. So it's again it all goes back to our early life. So it is important to recognize what is being triggered, why it's being triggered, where it comes from, so that when you have the first picture, you're able to make concrete steps towards changing that. But a lot of it, actually everything is around awareness. So simple things like meditation, yoga, anything that allows one to slow the mind. When we are anxious, when we are worried, when we are fearful, our mind is super, super, super busy trying to tell us exactly what the things we should be afraid of. Right? So it's reaching to our past and looking at data and saying, oh, this stuff you have to be afraid of. Be fearful, be anxious. But when we meditate, when we calm our mind, there is less of that noise. When there is less of that noise, you are much more relaxed. When you are much more relaxed, you're not as tense. So again, it's about awareness and going with it. I tell you guys, everything points to the same thing, and it's all our inner selves. Okay. How can we tell if spirit reading is light or dark, or the reader? That's actually a really good question. So right away I'm being asked to say the word, use your intuition. I am obviously very intuitive. Obviously, right? But I'm also extremely analytical. Now, I'm not as analytical as I used to be, but it used to be freaking painful. And so I mostly lived in my head and therefore lived in my fears. So how does that tie into light or dark? That completely just baffled me. Why did I say that? Again, I lost the train of thought here. Anyway, I'm just going to continue. So using your intuition. How do we know if a spirit is reading is of light or dark? Anything that makes you feel fearful, negative, or if it makes you feel like negative feelings, I would say stay away. I always say use your intuition. Your guides, whoever will point you in the right direction. But you also have your intuition, which you have to listen to. So that is how you can tell. Generally speaking, and my guide said, don't talk about generalities. I'll speak about myself, okay? In my experience, because my passion is so to empower you. That is like my drug. I've never done drugs in my life, but that's like my drug. It is just, I'm just so passionate about it. So the chances of somebody who's so passionate about what they do and being, quote unquote dark, they're probably not very high. And the reason why I say this is because passion is driven from the heart. Fear is not driven by the heart. So listen to your intuition. You let your spidey senses tell you. Also, the type of messages that you are receiving. And example here. I used to get questions about curses, and I asked my guides about curses. So number one, I don't really believe in curses. And now there's a reason why I'm saying this. Why I don't believe? if I believe in energy, I should believe in curses. Yes and no. Here's what I believe. I believe that when you are strong within yourself, I don't care what anyone does or says to you, it will not affect you. Because at the end of the day, you have zero control of what a curse is, or of what a curse will do, or who will throw a curse at you. Absolute zero. The best way you can prevent that from affecting you is being strong within yourself. So here we go, right back to our center. But also, what I was going to say is that someone who is not working with pure intent will give messages that will not be of loving. Example, he says, give me an example. I never give negative messages to my clients. It just doesn't exist. That doesn't mean I am not honest, but my guides will always present information in a way that would enlighten a person versus scare one. So the way a person communicates is also very important, because you'll generally be able to pick up their intentions. But generally speaking, even though I'm not supposed to say that, use your intuition. I meditate every single day and also before every single client. That is how I clear my energy. And I am very aware of my energy and who I give my energy to. Therefore, I am in control of my energy. I wasn't that way before. And not because I connected with something bad, but because I didn't have as strong of a connection. But I will tell you, I used to watch horror movies a long time ago. And ever since I became very connected, I can't watch horror movies. I can't, because they evoke fear in me. And dark energy feeds on fear. So I do everything I can in order to minimize that to happen. Plus, I've worked with spirit for so many years. I just trust them. And I've developed enough of a comfort with my spirit guides that I trust them with my life. So I hope that answers the question. And I don't know if we have time, but one last thing. How can someone handle a controlling person? First and foremost, you cannot control a controlling person, so don't even try. But number one, ask yourself this question first. Why do you let yourself be controlled? Because you can be around a controlling person, but you don't have to be controlled by them. So a person will control those that can be controlled. Someone who cannot be controlled, well, they're not going to be controlled. So it's interesting, the question that's being asked, because I have a feeling whoever asked this question wants to know how to deal with them because they affect them negatively. So this is about you standing up for yourself, whoever you are. And no, you can't punch them in the face, and sometimes you will not be able to say anything. But this is about sureness of oneself, because the more sure you are within yourself, the more you know yourself, the more awareness you have, the more connection you have within yourself, which is true divine spark, the less fearful you will feel, and therefore you will not attract controlling people to you, because like attracts like, right? I used to attract controlling people. I don't anymore. I worked on that aspect of my life really, really, really hard. So I think that's all we have.
That's it. This hour has whizzed by. I don't know how that happened, but it's now an hour. It's now an hour later. I think the whole evening's whizzed by. Thank you so much. It was a great show.
Are we on air?
I don't know. Yeah, I'm just going to run the end of the thing. Thank you.
Sorry, guys. That's it for tonight. I hope you like this. I didn't even get through like 1/3 of the questions. So let me know once I post this on YouTube. Let me know if you like it. If you do, I will make this a regular thing. It'll be a great practice for me. And thank you so much again. And see you later, guys. Bye.